Marina Castillo hid her 7-year-old daughter in the linen room of a five-star hotel at 9:04 in the morning. By 9:26, the little girl was already in the lobby, sharing her ice cream with the owner of the entire building. This, as you can imagine, was not part of the plan. The plan was simple, so simple that Marina had rehearsed it in her head during the whole bus ride from her apartment to the hotel, with Luna dozing on her shoulder and a unicorn backpack squashed between them. Step 1. Arrive before the supervisor on duty. Step 2. Settle Luna into the basement linen room with a tablet, headphones, 3 ham sandwiches, and a juice box. Step 3. Go upstairs, clock in, and work 8 hours without anyone finding out there was a small human being temporarily living among the hotel's spare sheets. Step 4. Pick Luna up at the end of the shift and leave without Claudia Herrera, the manager, seeing absolutely anything. The plan had failed at Step 2, specifically, on the detail that Luna was 7 years old, had the attention span of a caffeinated hummingbird, and held a very strong opinion about being left alone in a room with no windows. It smells like sad sheets, she had told her mother with total seriousness, while Marina tried to settle her into the coziest corner of the basement. Sheets don't have feelings, Luna. Well, these ones do. And with that crushing logic that only 7-year-olds and Greek philosophers possess, Luna had waited exactly 22 minutes before setting off on her own expedition towards civilization. What she found in the lobby of the Alvarado Bahia Hotel was a man, a very handsome man, to be exact, wearing dark jeans, a gray t-shirt, and an open jacket that had clearly cost more than Marina earned in 2 months, though she didn't know that yet. He was sitting in one of the leather armchairs in the lobby, phone in hand, with the kind of expression Luna immediately recognized, the look of someone who urgently needed somebody to talk to. She had a vanilla ice cream that was melting at an alarming speed. He had the face of someone who hadn't smiled in days. The logic was flawless. Want some? Luna offered, planting herself in front of him with the ice cream held out like a white flag. It's melting, and I can't finish it all by myself. The man looked up from his phone, blinked once, twice, glanced at the ice cream, glanced at the girl, and processed the situation. Mateo Alvarado Ruiz had spent 36 years on this earth. He'd negotiated contracts with investors in 4 countries. He'd restructured a hotel chain out of bankruptcy and survived 3 years of a global pandemic without losing a single one of his hotels. But in his entire life, no one had ever offered him ice cream. My mom says I shouldn't accept things from strangers, Luna continued thoughtfully. But technically, I'm the one offering it to you. So I think the rule doesn't apply here. Mateo did something he hadn't done in weeks. He laughed. Not the polite laugh from meetings, not the calculated smile from business dinners, a real laugh, short and surprised, one that escaped his chest without permission. What's your name? Luna asked. Mateo. And yours? Luna. You look sad, Mateo. He opened his mouth, closed it, considered several sophisticated adult responses to that comment, and chose the only honest one. It shows that much. Pretty much. But don't worry. My mom makes that face too, when she checks the bills every month. Then she makes chicken and rice, and it kind of goes away. And right there, in that exact moment, in the lobby of a 5-star hotel in Malaga, with a vanilla ice cream melting between them, Mateo Alvarado had the first genuine conversation he could remember having in months with a 7-year-old. When life wants to be ironic, it doesn't hold back. Luna. The voice arrived before the person did. A voice with that very particular tone mothers use when they're trying to sound calm and are, in fact, the absolute opposite of calm. Mateo looked up and saw a woman crossing the lobby at a brisk pace, wearing the hotel uniform, white blouse, dark pants, the hotel's logo slightly crooked on her chest, with a latex glove in one hand and brown hair escaping her bun in at least 3 different directions. She was, objectively, the picture of someone who'd had a complicated morning. She was also, objectively, quite beautiful, though Mateo decided that thought wasn't relevant right now. Luna. Please, I asked you not to leave the room. Marina stopped dead when she saw the man. She recomposed herself in about a second and a half. I'm so sorry. I hope she didn't bother you. She's my daughter. She sometimes wanders off. She didn't bother me at all, Mateo said. Really, sir, it won't happen again. Actually, miss, he interrupted gently. She offered me half her ice cream. It's been the best part of my morning. Marina looked at him, sized him up with that particular speed people develop when reading situations is part of their job. She saw a young, attractive man in expensive clothes, but with none of the look of a tourist. No suitcase in sight. None of that just arrived in the city expression. Something didn't quite add up. But the relief that he wasn't furious with Luna took up too much mental space to process the rest. That's very kind of you, she said with dignity. Luna, come with me now. Mom, I was telling Mateo that chicken and rice helps with sadness. Luna, that's private information. It's a hotel lobby. Mateo stood up. He was taller than he'd looked sitting down, and Marina had to adjust her line of sight slightly. Do you work here? He asked, with a casualness that gave nothing away. Yes, maintenance and housekeeping. 4th shift. And your daughter? Marina lifted her chin exactly 1 centimeter. It was a small gesture, almost imperceptible, but Mateo noticed it. It was the gesture of someone about to give an explanation they shouldn't have to give. The babysitter canceled this morning. I didn't have a choice. She said it plainly, no apology, no drama. Just a fact. Mateo nodded. He said nothing more about it. Marina noticed that too. It was unusual for a guest. Most would have made some comment, some remark about hotel policy, some unnecessary question. Are you new here? He asked instead. For years. And do you like it? It was Luna who answered first, because Luna always answered first. My mom comes home with backache and sometimes says bad words about the sheets, but the hotel smells really nice. Marina closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. When she opened them, the man was looking at Luna with something that could have been tenderness, or could have been disbelief. Probably both at once. Bad words about the sheets are understandable, Mateo said. I imagine some sheets deserve it. That's what I say, Luna confirmed, very seriously. And Marina, who had worked at that hotel for 4 years without ever once smiling in the lobby in front of a guest, because Claudia's policy was total invisibility for maintenance staff, laughed. It was short. She covered it with her hand almost immediately, but it had happened. Rodrigo Pena, the receptionist on duty, who had been watching the whole scene from behind the desk for 10 minutes, coffee completely forgotten in his hand, leaned toward his co-worker Elena and murmured, "That man doesn't look like a guest." Elena didn't look up from the screen. All guests look like guests. Not this one, Rodrigo insisted. This one looks like the owner. Elena still didn't look up. Rodrigo filed it away mentally to investigate later. If this story already got a smile out of you with Luna and her vanilla ice cream, fall in love with this story, because here we don't just tell romances, we build little worlds where a glance in a lobby, a child who's a little too honest, and an impossible secret can change everything. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the rest, because this story is just getting started, and I promise you, Mateo still has a lot to hide. The conversation lasted 15 minutes longer than Marina had planned. Mateo asked if Luna's school was nearby. Luna explained that yes, and that she liked math, but didn't like her art teacher because she played classical music when Luna preferred reggaeton. Mateo said he understood completely. Marina looked at him with genuine surprise, because that wasn't the response adults usually gave to that kind of childhood declaration. At some point during that conversation, neither of them could have said exactly when, Marina stopped being nervous. She still had overdue bills. She still had a crooked uniform and a bun about to collapse. She was still a maintenance worker talking to a guest in the lobby when she should technically be on the 3rd floor changing towels. But there was something about this man, the way he listened, the way he looked at Luna without an ounce of condescension, that made all that social distance feel less real than usual. I have to get back to work, she said finally, taking Luna's hand. Of course, he said. It's been a pleasure, Mateo, Luna said with a formality clearly copied from some adult. I hope the chicken and rice works for you. I hope so too. Marina was already turning to leave when he spoke. Could I ask you something? She stopped. Earlier you said the hotel isn't so pleasant for the people who keep it running. Did you mean that? Marina looked at him. She calculated. He was a guest who didn't seem like the type to go complain to management that an employee had said something inappropriate, but there were no guarantees. She decided yes, she meant it, and if it cost her the job, then the job had a deeper problem than just her. Double shifts aren't paid fairly. Wages have dropped over the last few months with no official explanation, and the manager thinks the cleaning staff is part of the furniture, she said, without raising her voice. The hotel is beautiful for whoever sleeps here. Not so much for whoever keeps it standing. Silence. Mateo stared at her. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Thank you for telling me, he said. I don't know why I did, she replied honestly. Because you're right, he said. And people who are right should be able to say so. Marina nodded, took Luna's hand, and disappeared down the hallway. Mateo stood still for exactly 30 seconds, then pulled out his phone and called his assistant. I need the complete salary history for the maintenance staff over the last 12 months, he said, and the general manager's bonuses. Today, at the front desk, Rodrigo Pena watched the call, saw the expression on the man's face, and made a second mental note. That man was definitely not a guest. At 2 in the afternoon, Mateo was still at the hotel, not in his room, the presidential suite the manager had prepared and that he hadn't even gone up to see yet, but in the ground floor bar, with a cold coffee and 3 documents his assistant had sent to his phone. The numbers were worse than he'd suspected. Maintenance staff salaries had dropped 17% in 8 months. Claudia Herrera's bonuses had risen 32% in the same period. Overtime hours didn't appear in the official records, though they did appear in the clock-in system. Someone had built a fairly clever system to funnel money upward, taking it from the people who could least afford to lose it. And that system had been running in his hotel, with his name on the building, without him knowing. Mateo wasn't one for guilt. Guilt was unproductive, but this weighed on him in a way the numbers alone couldn't explain. He kept seeing the image of Marina lifting her chin that exact centimeter before explaining that the babysitter had canceled, the gesture of someone who refuses to apologize for a situation that isn't their fault. At 2:15, Marina walked out the side door of the hotel with Luna's hand in hers, the unicorn backpack over her shoulder, and the remains of that morning's ice cream disaster wrapped in a napkin. Mateo watched her through the glass. He made one of those fast decisions you don't overthink, because if you overthink them, you never make them. He went outside. Marina. She turned, saw him, processed the fact that he was outside the hotel and had followed her, and her expression moved through 3 distinct phases in 2 seconds. Surprise, evaluation, and something that wasn't exactly discomfort, but wasn't total comfort either. You're still here? She asked. I'm still here, he confirmed. I wanted to apologize. For what? For not speaking up earlier, when I should have, he said, without going into details he couldn't give. And I wanted to thank Luna for the ice cream. Officially. You're welcome, Mateo, Luna said, appearing from behind her mother's leg. It worked. What worked? The ice cream. For the sadness. He looked at her, smiled slowly. Pretty well, actually. Yeah. Marina was watching him with that focused attention of hers, the kind he'd already learned to recognize as a sign she was processing more than she let on. It was uncomfortable in a way that didn't feel unpleasant. Do you have plans this afternoon? He asked. Marina took a second to answer. I have to take Luna to the park, do the grocery shopping, and study for 2 hours. I'm studying business administration, online. 3 years in now. Something in Mateo's expression shifted, so briefly that she didn't catch it. But Luna did. Do you know about business administration, Mateo? The girl asked. Some, he said carefully. Could you help my mom with her homework? Luna, Marina said. It's a logical question. It's an invasive question. Why? If I didn't know something, and he did, he'd ask. Marina looked at the man. He was looking at her with an expression that was hard to read, but it wasn't arrogant. It wasn't that look guests gave when the cleaning staff said something unexpectedly smart. That mix of surprise and faint discomfort. It was simply attention. Do you know anywhere good to eat in Malaga? She asked, before she could stop to think whether that was a good idea. I'm new here, he admitted. Well then, I know where to eat well in Malaga, Marina said. And if you've got nothing better to do tonight, you're welcome to join us. Rodrigo Pena, who had stepped out for some air during his 2:30 break, watched from the corner as Marina Castillo gave her phone number to the man from the lobby, at the man's own request. Meanwhile, Luna Castillo watched the whole scene with the quiet satisfaction of someone who already knew exactly how this was going to end. Do you think Marina was right to give him her number? Would you have? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, now's the time, so you don't miss the rest of this story or the one still coming. Elena, Rodrigo said, walking back to the front desk. That man who was in the lobby this morning. Do you know how he checked in? He didn't check in, Elena replied without looking at him. The manager's been waiting for him for a private meeting, but he never went up to his room. Rodrigo processed that. So who is he? I don't know. The manager never said his name. Rodrigo sat down slowly in his chair. Then, with great solemnity, Elena. I think Marina just gave her number to the owner of the hotel. Elena looked up for the first time in 2 hours. What? You'll see, Rodrigo said. You'll see. That night, Mateo Alvarado walked into a neighborhood bar in the historic center of Malaga. Worn wooden tables, paper napkins, the good smell of fried food, and a TV in the corner showing a soccer match. The owner knew Marina by name. She asked after Mrs. Norma, the fallen babysitter, and genuinely cared about the answer. Mateo couldn't remember the last time he'd walked into a place where someone asked about another person by name. What do you usually order when you go out for dinner? Marina asked, studying the chalkboard of specials. Depends on the restaurant. Here they've got grilled sardine skewers, eggplant with honey, and a burger that weighs twice as much as your phone. I'll take the burger. Good choice. Why? Because the sardine skewers take technique, and beginners always burn their fingers. Mateo looked at her. You think I'm a beginner? I think you're someone who hasn't had a burger in a neighborhood bar in a long time. Pause. It shows, the way you're looking at the menu, Marina said, without taking her eyes off the chalkboard, as if she were searching for the wine list. There's no wine list. There's house wine, red or white, served in a jug. And it's really good. Luna, who had spent the last 5 minutes trying to reach the salt shaker, jumped in without warning. Mateo, do you have kids? No. Do you have a girlfriend? Luna, Marina said. It's a courtesy question. It's not a courtesy question. Mrs. Carmen always asks that when she meets someone. Mrs. Carmen is 72. That earns her certain privileges you don't have yet. Mateo answered before the debate could go any further. No, I don't have a girlfriend. Ah, Luna said. That's why you're sad. I'm not sad. This morning you were. This morning I had a lot on my mind. When I have a lot on my mind, I get sad too. My mom says you have to talk about it, or else it stays inside and rots. Silence. Mateo looked at Marina. Marina looked at Luna with that specific expression mothers get when they're proud and embarrassed at the same time. It's a family policy, Marina said by way of explanation. It's a sensible policy, he replied. And dinner stretched on for 2 hours. Mateo ate the burger, which was, honestly, the best burger he'd had in years, though he didn't say that out loud because it seemed unlikely and yet was true, and drank house wine from a jug, and listened to Luna explain in great detail the geopolitical conflicts of her second-grade classroom, and listened to Marina talk about her studies, about what she wanted to do once she finished, about the idea of someday running something of her own. He didn't talk much about himself. When asked, he gave true but vague answers. Companies, travel, constant work. Marina didn't push, something he appreciated in a way he couldn't quite explain. What he did do, at some point during the second jug of wine, was laugh for real 2 more times. He counted them without meaning to, because it felt that new. If someone had told Mateo Alvarado a week earlier that he'd spend 4 days in Malaga without setting foot in a single conference room, without ever wearing the suit he'd packed, and that the highlight of those 4 days would be attempting to dance sevillanas at a neighborhood club while a 7-year-old corrected his posture, he would have told that person to get checked out. And yet, the cultural club, the Pena Malagueña, wasn't exactly the kind of place you'd find in a luxury travel guide. It was a big space in the Perchel neighborhood, with plastic chairs stacked in the corners, a long and noisy bar, colored lights that never quite synced with the music, and a sign at the entrance reading, Popular Flamenco Night, every Thursday, with the letters slightly crooked. Marina arrived with Luna asleep on one arm and Mateo's jacket draped over the other, because she'd told him it was cold, even though it wasn't. She'd just wanted something to do with her hands when Mateo arrived. He showed up right on time, in jeans and a blue shirt, without the jacket Marina was holding, with the expression of someone in unfamiliar territory who decided that was interesting rather than uncomfortable. Does she always sleep like that? He asked, looking at Luna, who had closed her eyes on the bus and never opened them again. Like a rock, Marina confirmed. In 10 minutes, she'll wake up with enough energy for 2 more hours. It's a prodigious phenomenon. That's exactly the word for it. They sat at a table near the stage. Marina greeted 4 different people in the first 3 minutes, which told Mateo something concrete about how she lived in this city, rooted, with real ties to the neighborhood, to the people. Not the decorative kind of roots people put down when they move somewhere and then claim to know the place. Luna woke up exactly 9 minutes later, as if she had an internal timer, and announced with full authority that she wanted to dance. You too, she told Mateo. I don't know how to dance Sevillanas. Nobody does, at first. How do you know if you've never tried? Mateo looked at Marina for help. Marina sipped her beer, eyes on the stage. I'm not saving you. Thanks for the loyalty. I'm very loyal. To people who bring me wine. I didn't bring wine. Exactly. And so Mateo Alvarado, CEO of a hotel chain with locations in 6 countries, ended up on the dance floor of the Pena Malaguine Cultural Club, attempting to learn the basic step of the Sevillanas under the tutelage of a 7-year-old who treated her role as instructor with a seriousness that would have been intimidating coming from an adult. No, not like that, Luna said, with infinite patience. The right foot goes first, not the left. Yes, I know it's the right one. Then why did you move the left one? Because my feet don't listen to me. That can't be true. You're supposed to tell them, not the other way around. In theory, Marina watched them from the table, beer in hand, with something warm settling in her chest that she'd been trying, and failing, to ignore. She watched that man, a man who clearly hadn't set foot in a place like this in a long time, if ever, actually try. No posturing, no detached irony, none of the armor people wear when they have a lot to lose by embarrassing themselves in public. He was trying with a clumsy honesty that was, objectively, pretty disarming. There are moments when you realize you're in trouble before you can do anything about it. Marina had that moment exactly when Mateo glanced toward the table, looking for her. He found her. He saw she was watching him, and, instead of looking away, which would have been the sensible thing, he shrugged with a smile that said, "This is a disaster, and I don't care." Marina didn't look away either. What followed wasn't exactly a dance lesson anymore. It was more of a group effort, with Luna directing, Mateo obeying with moderate results, and Marina ending up on the floor too, not because anyone asked, but because the music slowed down. Luna declared that now it was the grown-ups' turn to dance, and went off to get a soda with admirable determination. So the two of them stayed. The music was slow. The space between them, which at first had been the right amount of space for 2 people who'd known each other for 4 days, gradually grew smaller, imperceptibly, the way these things happen when neither person has consciously decided anything, but neither one stops it either. His hand on her waist, light at first, then not so light. His cologne, which she'd noticed that first morning and which, at this distance, was much harder to ignore. What will you do when you leave Malaga? Marina asked, because she needed to say something. Work, he said. Like always. No vacations? Work trips. That's not the same. No, he admitted. It's not the same. Silence. The kind that doesn't feel awkward, but takes up space in a different way. This week has been different, he said, without finishing the thought. Different how? I don't remember what it was like to be somewhere without having to prove anything. Marina looked at him. They were close enough now that this could become uncomfortable, if they let it, or something else entirely, if they didn't stop it. What do you normally have to prove? Depends on the day. She nodded. Didn't push. That was another thing he'd noticed about Marina. She knew when a question had run its course. Luna came back with her soda and a colorful beaded bracelet on her left wrist. Here, she told Mateo, holding it out. For good luck. It's yours. I have 3, and you look like you need more luck than I do. Mateo looked at it for a second, then held out his hand and let Luna slip the bracelet onto his right wrist. He didn't take it off for the rest of the night. It had been an afternoon at the Malagueta beach, at that hour when the sun goes down slowly and the Mediterranean turns that exact color between blue and gold that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. Exactly like that. Luna had run toward the water with her shoes in her hand, completely ignoring the temperature of the May water, and had stayed at the shoreline splashing and collecting shells with the focus of a scientist. Marina and Mateo walked behind, slowly, her sandals dangling from one finger, his feet bare in the sand for the first time in so long, he couldn't remember the last time. They didn't talk much. It was the kind of silence that no longer needs filling. At some point, without either of them planning it, their hands brushed and neither pulled away. That night, after dropping Luna off with Mrs. Norma, recovered now, ankle bandaged, but in good spirits, Marina and Mateo stayed on the street outside the entrance for a stretch of time neither of them measured. I should go up, she said. Yeah, he said. Neither moved. The May air smelled of salt and jasmine. The streets of the old town were nearly empty at that hour. A distant car. Music filtering out from some bar. The world existing in parallel, indifferent, and at that moment, neither of them cared much. Marina, he said. Just her name. Just that. But he said it in a way that she knew exactly what came next, even though no words followed. When he leaned in, it was slow, unhurried, with the kind of focus that desire has when it's being honest. He put his hand on her face first, palm to her cheek, thumb brushing her cheekbone, and looked at her for a second that felt much longer. Tell me if you don't want this, he said. If I didn't want it, I'd already be upstairs, she replied. The kiss was soft at first, the kind of kiss that starts like a question. Then she gripped his shirt with her fingers, and the question got its answer, and the kiss stopped being soft and became something else entirely. His hand found her waist, pulling her toward him, unhurried, but without hesitation. She felt the warmth of his body through the fabric, and something in her breathing changed, irreversibly. Come up, Marina said against his mouth. And he went up. The apartment was small, kept with the precision of someone who has little space and has learned to make the most of it. Books stacked beside the sofa, one of Luna's drawings stuck to the fridge with a sun-shaped magnet, the unicorn backpack hanging by the door. He took it all in for a moment, a real home, with a real history. Then he looked at her. Marina was leaning against the kitchen doorframe, barefoot, her hair already loose from the bun that had come undone on their walk along the beach, looking at him with an expression that wasn't doubt. It was a final decision. The kind you already know the ending to, but make anyway, because you're being honest with yourself. Mateo crossed the apartment slowly. He touched her neck, ran his fingers through her hair, felt her close her eyes for 1 second, just one, before she looked at him again. Stay, she said. It wasn't a plea. It was a choice. He didn't answer with words. Here, the narrator, who usually has something to say, decides, for once, to stay quiet. Some moments don't need commentary. The next morning, Mateo woke up to the Malaga sun pouring through curtainless windows and the smell of fresh coffee drifting in from the kitchen. It took him exactly 3 seconds to remember where he was, not because he was confused, but because he normally woke up in hotels or in his own apartment, and this sound, the coffee, the unfiltered sunlight, a little girl's voice singing something from the living room, was different from all of that. He pulled on yesterday's t-shirt and walked out. Luna was sitting on the living room floor with a notebook open, singing something that wasn't quite a song, more like a mashup of different songs with her own lyrics added in. Marina stood in the kitchen with her back to him, in pajamas, an old worn-out t-shirt and striped pants, hair loose, stirring something in a pan. Luna saw him first. Good morning, she said, without a trace of surprise, as if Mateo standing in her living room at 8 in the morning were the most normal thing in the world. Good morning, Luna. My mom's making toast with tomato. She makes it really well. Yeah, with garlic. Garlic's important. Marina had turned at the sound of his voice. She looked at him for a second, that next morning second where everything could go in any direction, and then said, with perfect ease, Want some coffee? Yes, please. Black or with milk? Black, like grumpy people, Luna commented, without looking up from her notebook. Luna, Mrs. Carmen drinks it black too, and she says she's grumpy as well. Mrs. Carmen has her reasons. And so does Mateo. Mateo took the coffee Marina handed him. Their fingers brushed against the cup, and she didn't pull her hand away right away. I have my reasons too, he said. Marina smiled. A small smile, the kind that isn't planned. I can see that. Day 9 started like all the others. Mateo, in the hotel, working quietly from his room, reviewing documents, making calls. Marina, on the morning shift, 3rd floor, rooms 301 to 318. What Mateo didn't know was that the presidential suite, on the 11th floor, the room listed in the system as occupied by a Mr. M. Ruiz, using his mother's second surname. The name he always used to move through his own hotels without anyone knowing who he was, before he was ready to be known, was being put to a different use that day. Claudia Herrera had decided, without consulting anyone, that there would be a directors' meeting that afternoon in the room adjoining the suite. a meeting she herself had called to present her own altered numbers before any audit could arrive. Marina was assigned to prep that suite. She opened the door with her maintenance key card, came in with her cart, and started on the windows. Voices drifted in from the adjoining meeting room. Claudia speaking in her usual tone, that tone that mixed authority and condescension in equal measure. Before Mr. Alvarado reviews the quarterly reports, I need everyone aligned. The figures we present this afternoon are the official ones. Any discrepancy with the internal system stays out of this room. Marina froze. Alvarado. Mr. Alvarado. The hotel was called the Alvarado Bahia. Another voice. A young man, nervous. Has he confirmed he's coming today? He arrived 9 days ago, Claudia replied. He's in the suite. He hasn't requested a formal meeting, which is unusual. But this afternoon we're going to force the meeting before he starts asking questions on his own. 9 days. Marina dropped the cleaning spray without realizing it. The sound of the bottle hitting the floor was small, but enough. The voices stopped. The door to the meeting room opened, and there he was. Mateo Alvarado, in a navy suit, tie loosened, phone in one hand, with the expression of someone who had just calculated exactly how many seconds this situation had been out of his control. Behind him, for people in business attire, and Claudia Herrera, who, for the first time since Marina had worked at that hotel, seemed not to know what expression to wear. Marina, he said. Just that. Just her name. But not the way he'd said it that night by the door, the night of the jasmine and the kiss and everything else. He said it like someone who'd just been caught. Marina looked at the man in the suit, looked at the loosened tie, looked at the colorful beaded bracelet peeking out from his shirt cuff, Luna's bracelet, still on his wrist. And she understood everything. Not all at once, worse than that. The pieces clicked into place one by one, in under 3 seconds, each one hurting more than the last. M. Ruiz. Not Ruiz, Alvarado. The second surname, the one he used so no one would recognize him. The presidential suite. 9 days. He arrived 9 days ago. The man who'd come to the hotel to investigate, the owner of the hotel she cleaned, the man she'd told that the wages were a disgrace, the man she'd told about her studies, her plans, Mrs. Norma. Luna, the man who'd been in her bed. The broom slipped from her hand. Claudia opened her mouth to say something. Marina never found out what. But it was Mateo who spoke first. Marina, let me explain. No, she said. Her voice came out steady, which surprised even her. You don't need to. Yes, I do. There are things you need to understand. I already understand, she said. I told my life story to the owner of the hotel that underpays me. That's what I understand. He took a step toward her. She stepped back. I thought I was talking to a man, she said, with a calm that cost her more than it showed. But I was talking to a company. She walked out of the suite, not running, because Marina Castillo didn't run, but she didn't stop either. Claudia Herrera, who had spent the last 9 days believing she had total control over the situation, looked at her boss and said, "What just happened?" Mateo looked at her with the same expression he used when a negotiation collapsed because of his own mistake. "None of your business," he said. "Now sit down. We have a lot to talk about, you and I." Marina didn't answer his calls. There were 4 the first day, 6 the second, and then messages she read but didn't reply to, because she wasn't the kind of person who ignores someone by pretending not to see. She read them. She processed them. And she still didn't answer. Mateo's messages weren't pleas, they were explanations. That he'd come to the hotel to investigate irregularities. That he hadn't said who he was because he wanted to observe without contaminating anything. That he hadn't planned to meet her. That by the time he had met her, it was already too late to fix the situation without making it worse. That what had happened between them had nothing to do with the hotel, or the wages, or anything else, only with her. Marina read the messages. Read them twice. Then set the phone face down on the table. The problem wasn't that she didn't believe him. The problem was that she did believe him, and it still hurt exactly the same. Luna, who processed the world with a literalness that could sometimes be painful, asked on the 3rd day, "Was Mateo a lie too?" Marina took too long to answer. "He wasn't a lie," she said. "It was just an incomplete story." What part was missing? That he was the boss of everyone at the hotel where I work. Luna thought about this for a long moment. But he didn't know we were going to meet him, right? And once he met us, he wasn't mean to us, right? So, why are you angry? Marina looked at her daughter. Sometimes the clarity of a 7-year-old was a gift. Other times, it was the most inconvenient thing in the world. Because I trusted someone without having all the information, she said. That happens every time you trust someone, Luna said. Marina didn't respond. But that night, she didn't turn the phone face down either. Meanwhile, at the hotel, Mateo was making decisions. Claudia Herrera was terminated, effective immediately. The disciplinary process was fully documented. The maintenance staff's wages were restored to their correct level, plus 8 months of back pay, with an official statement, signed by him, acknowledging the failure of the oversight system. He didn't do it for Marina to find out. He did it because it was the right thing to do, and because he'd known it was the right thing to do for 9 days, and there was no longer any reason to wait. It was Rodrigo who told Marina. Rodrigo, who had spent 10 days gathering information with the dedication of an amateur private investigator, showed up at the bar where Marina had coffee before her shift, with the look of someone who had big news and hadn't slept well from the excitement. The thing with Claudia, I already know. And the back pay thing. Marina looked up. What back pay? Rodrigo told her everything. The numbers, the statement, the fact that Mateo had spent the last 4 days at the hotel without leaving, working from the suite, not asking for anything special, not behaving like the owner of a 5-star hotel, except in the meetings his position required. And the thing the other day, in the lobby, Rodrigo added carefully. What thing in the lobby? A very beautiful woman showed up, very well dressed. She met him at the bar. It was a work meeting, that was clear from the start, but he was polite and distant the whole time. Elena says she tried, and he said he had personal commitments. Marina looked at him. Why are you telling me this? Because, Rodrigo said, with all the delicacy in the world, I think you're processing the situation, and sometimes extra information helps the processing. Marina drank her coffee. You're a gossip. I'm a gossip with good intentions, Rodrigo corrected. He found him at the ground floor bar of the hotel, not in the suite. That, for Marina, meant something even before she saw him. If Mateo had wanted to control the narrative, he would have summoned her to the presidential suite, or an office, or a meeting room with glass walls and coffee served in white porcelain. He would have chosen a place where marble, heavy curtains, and expensive silence worked in his favor. But no, he was at the ground floor bar, at a small table by the windows, in jeans and a white t-shirt, hair slightly messy, phone face down on the table. No suit, no tie, no surname written on any door. No one behind him, just him. And that was the first thing that bothered her, because even when she wanted to be furious, he'd chosen the setting well. Marina stood in the entrance for a few seconds, bag over her shoulder, still in uniform. Her shift had ended 17 minutes ago. 17 exact minutes during which she'd walked the hotel hallways telling herself she wasn't going to shake, that she wasn't going to let her voice crack, that she wasn't going to let her eyes do that ridiculous thing of welling up every time she thought about the way he'd said her name in the suite, Marina, as if trying to stop a landslide with a single word. She'd spent the entire shift going over what she was going to say. She had her arguments lined up, specific questions, sentences she'd rehearsed in her head while folding sheets, restocking towels, and pretending the world was still working normally. She even had the exact tone prepared. Firm, no drama, no unnecessary concessions. None of that vulnerability you replay at 4 in the morning wondering why you said so much when you could have said so little. But when Mateo saw her come in and stood up, that exact tone slipped somewhere out of reach. He didn't smile, didn't try to approach, didn't raise his hand. None of the things people do when they want to look calm and only end up looking guilty. He just stood up. Marina, he said. And there it was again, her name, in his mouth. This time it didn't sound like it had by the door that night. None of the softness of that night, none of the quiet promise, none of the warm May air between them. It sounded like surrender. Marina tightened her grip on her bag strap. Sit down, she said, please. Mateo obeyed immediately. That bothered her too, a little, because part of her, the most hurt part, would have preferred him to do something wrong, to over-justify himself, to sound arrogant, to say one of those executive phrases that fix disasters with 3 empty words. But he sat down and waited. Marina walked to the table. She set her bag on the chair beside her, not on the floor, because she needed something to do with her hands. Then she sat across from him. For a few seconds, neither spoke. The bar had that soft mid-afternoon hum of elegant places, spoons clinking against porcelain, the discreet footsteps of waiters, the murmur of a foreign couple near the bar, the distant sound of the sea, which didn't actually reach that far, but in Malaga always seemed close. Mateo had an untouched cup of coffee in front of him and a glass of water. The phone was still face down. Marina looked at it. "Were you expecting a call?" she asked. He glanced down for a second. "I put it like that because I didn't want to check the screen every 10 seconds, wondering if it was you." Marina didn't respond. But something small, something uncomfortable, shifted inside her. "I have a question," she said. "Anything you want. Don't say that yet. You might not like it." "It doesn't have to be likable," he replied. "It has to be true." Marina looked at him. There it was, the problem. He knew how to say the right things. Or worse, he knew how to say them as if he actually meant them. "When were you going to tell me?" The question sat on the table like a broken glass. Mateo didn't look away. He didn't reach for his water. He didn't pretend he needed more time to think than he already had. "I don't know," he said. Marina let out a short, humorless laugh. "That's not a good answer. It's the honest one. Those are different things." "I know." She watched him in silence. Mateo rested his forearms on the table. The bracelet was still on his right wrist. The colorful beads looked absurd against his skin, against his expensive watch, against this man who could sign documents that changed other people's lives. And yet he still seemed not to know what to do with his own hands. "At first I thought it wasn't relevant," he said. "I was going to be here one day, two at most. My presence at the hotel had to be discreet. I needed to see how things ran without anyone changing their behavior, because the owner was watching." Marina lifted her chin slightly. "And then we showed up. And then you two showed up." The word landed softer than Marina was prepared to handle. "Luna offered me ice cream," he continued. "You came running, thinking your daughter had bothered a guest. You spoke to me with respect, but also with that dignity of yours that doesn't ask for permission. And in 15 minutes, you told me more truths about my own hotel than every report I'd requested in months." Marina swallowed. "You could have told me right then who you were." "Yes. You could have said, 'I work for the chain,' or 'I'm reviewing the hotel,' or anything other than letting me believe you were just a guest." "Yes, but I didn't." "No." The honesty of his answers irritated her, because it gave her nothing to push against. No grand excuse, no new lie, just that yes, that no, that bare acceptance of fault. "Why?" she asked. Mateo looked at his own hand on the table. "Because I was ashamed." Marina hadn't expected that. "Ashamed?" He nodded. "Ashamed to hear, from your own mouth, that double shifts weren't paid fairly. Ashamed that you said the cleaning staff was treated like part of the furniture. Ashamed that your 7-year-old daughter knew her mother came home with backaches and cursed the sheets. Ashamed to be the man whose name was on the building, while all of that was happening inside it." Marina lowered her gaze. Mateo took a deep breath, and then it stopped being just shame. It was fear. She looked back up. "Fear of what?" "Of you looking at me differently." Marina felt that sentence touch a place she didn't want anyone to touch. "Well, you got what you wanted," she said. "I do look at you differently." He closed his eyes for a moment, as if he'd expected it, and as if it still hurt. "I know." "No, I don't think you do," Marina said, and this time her voice came out shakier than she'd wanted. "Because you had all the information. I didn't. Did you know which hotel you were sleeping in? Which suite? What name you were registered under? What power you had? What you could fix, and what you could hide? I only knew I'd met a kind man in the lobby. A man who was good to my daughter. A man who listened to me. A man who seemed real." Her voice broke. Mateo said nothing, and that was worse, because in his silence there was no defense, only guilt. "What hurt me most wasn't that you were rich," she said, quieter now, "or that you were the owner, or even that you'd come to investigate. What hurt was feeling safe with someone who knew something important about me, while I didn't know something important about him." Mateo clenched his jaw. "You're right." Marina exhaled through her nose. "Don't say that just to calm me down. I'm not saying it to calm you down. I'm saying it because it's true." She looked toward the window. The afternoon light came in golden through the glass, touching the table, the cups, the edge of the face-down phone. Outside, the hotel kept welcoming guests, expensive suitcases, sunglasses, laughter in different languages. Life went on. The world had very little patience for broken hearts. "I don't want you to fix my life because you feel guilty," Marina said. Mateo looked up. The back pay, the salaries, the thing with Claudia, all of that is good, she continued. It's fair, it's necessary, and I'm happy for my co-workers, for Rodrigo, for Elena, for every woman who breaks her back in rooms where afterward no one remembers their name. But I don't want to be the reason you did it. You're not the reason, he said. Marina looked at him with distrust. Marina, if you were the reason, it would have been a gesture, a clumsy attempt to buy forgiveness. And I don't want that. Not with you. Not with Luna. I did it because it was the right thing to do, because the numbers were there, because the system was broken, because Claudia abused a power I allowed, without meaning to, but I allowed it, by not looking closely enough. He leaned forward slightly. You're not the reason. You're the person who forced me to see something I could no longer look away from. The sentence sat between them. Marina felt the absurd urge to cry, and she hated it a little. Not because crying was wrong. She'd cried plenty of times in the shower, paying bills, while Luna slept, doing impossible math with a pen that had run out of ink. But crying there, in front of him, at that elegant table, felt like giving away too much. So she did what she always did. She breathed, reorganized the pain, and kept going. Rodrigo told me about the statement. A shadow of something close to a smile crossed Mateo's face. Rodrigo tells a lot of things. Rodrigo should work in national intelligence. He probably already does and hasn't told us. Marina tried not to smile. She didn't quite manage it. Mateo saw it, and had the good sense not to celebrate. He also told me about the woman at the bar, Marina said. Mateo blinked. What woman? A very pretty one. Very well dressed. According to Rodrigo, she tried, you know. That's exactly what he said, with invisible air quotes. Mateo took a second to understand, then sighed. Isabel Montes. Investor. She wanted to talk about an expansion in Portugal, and personal commitments. He looked at her. Were the two of you? Marina looked down at her coffee. You shouldn't say things like that when I'm still angry. I know. It complicates the processing. I know that too. Rodrigo uses that word a lot now. Processing. He's been a self-appointed therapist ever since he got access to inside information. Mateo lowered his eyes, and for the first time in days, a small laugh moved through his chest. It wasn't a happy laugh, but it was a laugh. And it hurt Marina to remember how much she'd liked that sound. Silence. Not uncomfortable. Not comfortable either. The kind of silence that isn't empty. It's a room full of things nobody knows where to put. Marina looked at his wrist. When Luna gave you the bracelet, she said, more gently, why did you keep wearing it? Mateo glanced down. The bracelet sat there, small, colorful, ridiculous, completely out of place on a man like him, and yet it seemed to belong to him more than the watch did. Because it reminded me there was something I didn't want to lose, he said. Marina felt her throat tighten a little. And that's me. Mateo looked up. That's both of you. She didn't answer. The bar kept breathing around them. A waiter set down a glass at another table. Someone laughed near the bar. A guest asked about the restaurant. Everything too normal for a conversation that, to Marina, felt like walking a tightrope. Luna's mad at you, she said finally. Very, very. She has a list. A list of what? A list of preliminary conditions for considering your possible future forgiveness. Mateo went still. That sounds serious. It is. She used red marker. She says important secrets are bad manners. She learned that at school. She's right. She's always right. It's the most exhausting thing about living with her. Mateo allowed himself the smallest smile. And you? Do you have a list? Marina thought about it. She could have had one. Maybe she did. She just hadn't written it down. 1. Don't lie to me. 2. Don't decide for me. 3. Don't confuse helping with saving. 4. Don't use your guilt as if it were love. 5. Never make me feel small again inside a story that was mine too. I don't have a list, she said. I have memory. Mateo took the sentence without flinching. I know. And I don't know if I can trust you the same way. I'm not going to ask you to trust me the same way. Then what are you asking for? He took a moment. Not much. Enough. That you let me show you who I am, when I'm not hiding. Marina looked at him for a stretch of time neither of them measured. There was something in him that was still the same. The way he tilted his head slightly when he listened. The way he never crowded her silences. That full attention that had thrown her off from day one. But there was also something different now. Now she saw the power behind him. The name, the hotels, the suite, the signed decisions. And maybe that was the hardest part. She couldn't go back to the lobby. She couldn't return to the simple version of the story. She couldn't pretend he was just Mateo, the sad guest who'd accepted half an ice cream. But maybe, she thought, with a new kind of irritation, love wasn't about going back to the point where nothing hurt. Maybe it was looking at everything that did hurt and deciding whether there was still something real underneath. The suit was a disguise too, he said then, as if he'd been thinking about it for days, which was exactly the case. The name too. The guest too. The only time I was really myself was when Luna offered me that ice cream. And you looked at me like you didn't care how much money I had, or how many hotels. Marina opened her mouth, closed it, looked at him. This man, she thought, was still a problem. A problem with clear eyes, a beaded bracelet, real guilt, and a very inconvenient talent for saying things that scrambled her anger. You're still a problem, Mateo Alvarado, she said. He didn't smile, but something in his eyes softened. I know. And you still can't dance Sevillanas. I know that too. And if Luna decides to forgive you, she'll probably make you sign a document. I'll sign it. Don't say that without reading it first. It might include weekly lessons. I'll sign it anyway. Marina looked away for a second. She smiled, small, almost nothing. But Mateo saw it, and this time he didn't celebrate it either. He just stretched his hand across the table, open, without touching hers, without asking in words. A question. Marina looked at that hand. She remembered the first time she'd seen those hands holding a phone in the lobby. The melting ice cream. The burger at the neighborhood bar. The clumsy way he'd tried to dance while Luna corrected him like she was examining a particularly difficult student. The beach. The doorway. The morning with coffee and toast. And the sweet, too. The suit. The truth falling to the floor along with the cleaning spray. It wasn't an innocent hand. But it wasn't an empty one either. Marina took a few seconds, then placed hers on top. Mateo curled his fingers gently around hers, not too tight, as if he knew he didn't yet have the right to hold on hard. This doesn't mean everything's fixed, Marina said. I know. It doesn't mean you can show up tomorrow with flowers and a sad face and think that's it. I won't. Flowers aren't banned, she clarified. He looked at her. Understood. But they don't fix anything. Also understood. And you're going to talk to Luna, when you're ready, and you're going to apologize to her too. Not with gifts. With words. Mateo nodded. Yes. Marina looked down at their hands. His was still there, warm, present. And for the first time, the presidential suite didn't feel like a lie to her. It wasn't a movie ending. There was no music, no rain, no one running through an airport. No one applauded from another table. No waiter smiled like he'd just witnessed the perfect closing scene of a love story. It was just one hand on top of another, on a bar table, with the hum of the hotel in the background and the Malaga sun pouring through the windows. Sometimes that's how real things start. No grand promises, no flawless speeches, no guarantees. Just two people, tired enough of pretending, sitting down to tell the truth, and staying one more minute. Epilogue. A few months later, the Alvarado Bahia Hotel had a new room in the staff area, had it for 3 months now. It wasn't exactly the old linen room. It was right next to it, actually, but it no longer smelled like detergent or sad sheets, or that industrial tiredness of places nobody really looks at. It had 2 connected rooms, light walls, small tables, colorful chairs, bookshelves, a washable rug, toys sorted into clear bins, and a TV that Anna, the caregiver, used in moderation, because, in her words, kids already got plenty of screen time, and what they really needed was Play-Doh, storybooks, and learning how to argue without biting. Anna was in her 50s, gray hair pulled back in a bun, with the calm authority of a woman who had raised 3 children, for nieces and nephews, and half the kids in the neighborhood, without anyone ever giving her an official title for it. The room wasn't a luxury daycare. Mateo had insisted on that, repeatedly, when he presented the project. He didn't want a press photo. He didn't want a room full of expensive furniture no one could use for fear of staining it. He didn't want a ribbon-cutting ceremony, or a press release full of words like commitment, corporate family, and human excellence. He wanted a useful, functional, real place, somewhere employees' kids could be safe when life, as it tends to do, didn't respect work schedules. The first time Marina walked into that room, she froze in the doorway. Luna sat at a yellow table, drawing with 2 other kids. She had 2 crooked pigtails, a little flowered dress, and the absolute focus of someone designing something important. On the page was a giant hotel, an exaggerated sun, and 3 figures at the entrance: a woman in uniform, a girl with an ice cream, and a man with a colorful bracelet. "That's you," Luna said when Mateo came over to look. "I know it's you because of the bracelet, and because I drew you tall." "Thank you, though not quite that tall." Marina, from the doorway, brought a hand to her chest. She didn't cry. She came close, but Rodrigo Pena showed up at exactly that moment with a folder under his arm and ruined any chance of solemnity. "I don't want to exaggerate," Rodrigo said, "but this is probably the best thing to happen in this basement since they fixed the coffee machine." "Rodrigo," Marina said, "that is exaggerating. You have no idea what that machine used to be like." On the staff room bulletin board hung a memo from the CEO outlining the new terms for paid overtime, mandatory breaks between shifts, and the procedure for reporting irregularities without going through direct supervisors. Rodrigo had framed it, not because anyone asked him to, but because he felt some things deserved a frame. "It's not decoration," he explained, when Elena asked if he wasn't being a bit dramatic. "It's historical memory. Today it's an HR memo. Tomorrow, it's a relic." Elena decided not to argue, because arguing with Rodrigo when he was inspired was like trying to stop a suitcase on a conveyor belt, useless and slightly dangerous. Marina, for her part, kept working at the hotel. That mattered to her, above all. Mateo had offered, just once, to talk about a different position, not as a favor, he'd clarified right away, but as a future possibility once she finished her studies. Internal management, operational coordination, something where she could use everything she already knew about the hotel, which was far more than most executives understood from their offices. Marina had listened, had a sip of coffee, and then said, "When I earn it, we'll talk." Mateo didn't argue. He'd learned, with some pain and considerable speed, that Marina didn't need him pushing doors open for her. She needed him not to close them, not to stack the deck in her favor, not to confuse love with interference. So he didn't give her a scholarship, didn't pay her tuition, didn't buy her a new laptop, though he wanted to, badly, especially the night her old one took 43 minutes to update right before she had to submit an assignment. What he did do was sit with her for 2 Thursday nights, until midnight, at the small table in her apartment, going over hotel management case studies. Mateo, who had led meetings with German investors without blinking, discovered there was no pressure quite like Marina's saying, "Don't give me the answer. Help me think." That's what I'm doing. "No, you're making the face you make when you already know the answer." "It's just my face." "Change your face." Luna, doing homework at the other end of the table, looked up. "I also think that face is annoying." "Thanks for the support," Mateo said. "You're welcome. I'm practicing honesty." "You practice it too much." "That's not a thing." When Marina passed her final exam with a 9.5, Mateo opened a bottle of wine he'd brought from Madrid. He didn't give a long toast. He didn't say he was proud, as if that pride belonged to him. He just raised his glass and said, "You earned that. All on your own." Marina looked at him. There were a lot of things he could have said. That was the only one she needed to hear. "Yeah," she replied. "But thanks for not boring me to death with your lectures on operating margins. That was heroic of me." "It was." Luna, from the couch, without looking away from the TV, added, "I fell asleep twice." "Because you don't appreciate hotel management," Mateo said. "Because you sound like a documentary when you explain things." Marina laughed, and Mateo thought, not for the first time, that this household had ruined him for any other kind of happiness. Luna took a bit longer to officially forgive him, because allowing Mateo back for dinner was one thing, lifting the sanctions was something else entirely. For 3 weeks, she greeted him politely, but without enthusiasm. "Hi, Mateo." "Hi, Luna. You're still on probation." "I know. You didn't do anything suspicious today." "Good to hear. Don't get comfortable." The official forgiveness ceremony took place one Sunday afternoon at Marina's apartment, after Luna drew up a document titled Second Chances Agreement, underlined 3 times in purple marker. The document had 3 conditions. First, never keep important secrets again. Second, learn the basic Sevillanas step by the end of the year. Third, always wear the bracelet. Mateo read the document with the seriousness of a lawyer reviewing an international merger. "What happens if I fail condition 2? He asked. Luna crossed her arms. "Extra class." "With who?" With me. Mateo looked at Marina. This seems harsh. Children's justice usually is, she replied. The ceremony included a vanilla ice cream, because according to Luna, everything had started with ice cream, so the forgiveness had to close with ice cream too. Mateo accepted the ice cream, accepted the conditions, signed the document with a blue pen, and let Luna put the bracelet back on his wrist, even though he was already wearing it. It's to reinforce the contract, Luna explained. Naturally, Marina watched from the kitchen with a smile she'd given up trying to hide. That was the day she understood that forgiveness hadn't arrived like a lightning bolt. It had arrived the way important things usually do, slowly, in small gestures, in shared coffee, in uncomfortable conversations carried through to the end, in a man who wasn't trying to buy absolution, but learning to stay without a disguise. Mateo kept all three conditions. His progress on the basic step remained questionable. One Saturday afternoon, months later, on the Malagueta beach, the same golden sunset, the same sand, the same Mediterranean that seemed to invent a new color every time the sun went down, Luna ran barefoot along the shore looking for shells. She carried her shoes in one hand and a small bag in the other. She decided she needed 7 perfect shells, though she hadn't specified perfect for what. With Luna, some missions only revealed their purpose once it was too late to abandon them. Mateo and Marina walked behind, slowly, hands intertwined. They no longer walked with that careful distance from the early days, when every brush of skin felt like a question. Now their hands fit together with quiet ease. Marina was still Marina, proud, quick to spot a lie, incapable of accepting help if it came wrapped in pity. Mateo was still Mateo, intense, sometimes too serious, still dangerous near a dance floor. But there was something between them now that wasn't made of doubt anymore. It was made of time, of repeated choices, of not leaving when leaving would have been easier. What are you thinking about? Marina asked. Mateo was watching Luna celebrate finding a tiny shell as if she'd just discovered a lost civilization. That your daughter is going to run a company someday, and we're all going to be terrified. My daughter already runs this family. The company part will just be a formality. True. They kept walking. The sea with their feet now and then. Marina wore a light dress that the wind kept tugging at. Mateo had his sleeves rolled up, the colorful bracelet on his wrist, visible as always. He no longer hid it under his cuff. In fact, he'd left it in plain sight during several meetings. A director from Barcelona once asked if it was some kind of branding strategy. Mateo replied, "No. It's a contractual clause with a 7-year-old. The director never asked again. Marina still laughed every time she remembered it. Mateo stopped walking. Marina took 2 more steps before noticing, and turned back. What? He reached into his jacket pocket. Marina watched him do it, and something in her chest went still. Mateo, wait. I don't like it when you say wait with that face. What face? The face that says you have a plan. I have a small plan. Your small plans buy hotels. Not this one. He pulled out a simple box. Not a big one. No dramatic red velvet. No over-the-top shine. It was understated, almost shy. Mateo opened it. Inside was a white gold ring, simple, with a small blue stone, exactly the color of the Mediterranean at that hour of the day. Marina opened her mouth, said nothing. And then, for once, Mateo knelt in the sand. And that was what finally undid her, just a little. Not the ring, not the beach, not the sun, but seeing him there, on his knees, the bracelet on his wrist, looking at her not as if he were offering a perfect life, but a real one. I know you didn't ask for this, he said. I know you don't need me to fix anything. I know you can handle everything on your own. You've proven that more than enough. I'm not offering this because you're missing something. Marina brought a hand to her mouth. Luna, a few steps away, lifted her head, shell still in hand. I'm offering it, Mateo continued, because I want to be the person who walks with you. Not ahead, not behind. With you. Both of you. You and Luna. Through the easy days, the hard ones, the lists of conditions, the disastrous sevillanas, the chicken and rice for sadness, and every secret I'm promising never to keep again. Luna walked over slowly, the way she always did when she sensed something important happening and needed to personally supervise it. Are you asking my mom to marry you? Mateo closed his eyes for a second. Yes. Without telling me first? That's also a secret, Mateo. Marina covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with laughter. Technically, it's a surprise, he said. Surprises are just secrets that haven't happened yet, Luna declared. Mrs. Carmen said that. Mrs. Carmen, Mateo murmured. She has an opinion about everything. It's her best quality. Marina lowered her hands. Her eyes were bright, her smile undone. Well, Luna said, looking at her mother, arms crossed. What do you say? Marina looked at Mateo. The man in the suit who didn't look like a guest. The man who couldn't dance. The one who wore a colorful beaded bracelet to meetings where no one dared ask why. The one who'd come to Malaga to fix a hotel and found, in the lobby, a girl with an ice cream and a woman who couldn't lie even when she was telling the truth. The man who'd hurt her. The man who hadn't run when he had to listen to her. The man who hadn't saved her because she didn't need saving, but who'd learned to walk beside her. I say yes, Marina said. Mateo let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for months. Luna nodded with the satisfaction of someone whose plan had worked out exactly as intended. Good, she said. But next time, give me a heads up so I can prepare a speech. What speech? Mateo asked, still on his knees, eyes still wet. The one I give to grant permission. Mrs. Carmen says the maid of honor matters. I don't think that's quite how it works, Marina said. Mrs. Carmen knows more about weddings than you do. Mrs. Carmen has been married 3 times, Luna. Exactly. That's why. Mateo laughed. Marina laughed too. And then he slipped the ring onto her finger. No fireworks, no violin music, just the sound of the waves, the golden light falling over the beach, and Luna clapping with a shell still in her hand, as if she'd planned the whole thing from the start. Maybe, in a way, she had. Mateo stood up, took Marina's face in his hands, and kissed her right there, sweet and brief, with that mix of love and gratitude that sometimes only shows up after you've come close to losing something. Luna made a sound of approval. Okay, she said, but don't overdo it. There are kids present. That's you, Marina said, laughing against Mateo's mouth. Exactly. That's how I know what I'm talking about. Time later, Nicholas was born. Not right away, not as a narrative rush, not as a reward wrapped up at the end of a story. He arrived when the house already had a different rhythm, when Mateo already knew where the glasses were kept, when Marina had learned to let someone else make coffee without feeling like she was losing her independence, when Luna had decided the world, in general, needed her constant supervision. Nicholas weighed 7 pounds and 1 ounce. He had his father's dark hair and his mother's expression, that look of someone evaluating the world and deciding whether they approve of it. Luna observed him for almost a full minute before delivering her first official verdict. He's cute, she said, but he doesn't do much. He's 3 hours old, Mateo replied, eyes red. Well then, we'll give him time. Mateo cried in the delivery room, something he never would have predicted about himself. He didn't cry elegantly, or discreetly, or cinematically. He cried the way men cry when they've spent too many years believing that control was the same thing as living, and suddenly find themselves holding something they can't control at all. Marina reminded him of this for years, with tenderness and without mercy. You cried more than Nicholas. That's objectively false. Luna, your father cried more than Nicholas. Yes. Betrayal, Mateo murmured. Honesty, Luna corrected. It was their favorite dynamic. At the Alvarado Bahia Hotel, the children's room kept running. Ana kept insisting that Play-Doh was more useful than most meetings. Rodrigo kept treating the framed memo like a historical relic. Elena kept pretending she didn't care about gossip, though she always listened until the end. Marina finished her studies. She didn't take shortcuts. She didn't accept handouts. And when, sometime later, she earned a position in the hotel's operations department on her own merit, Mateo was the first to applaud from the back of the room. Nicholas in his arms, Luna beside him holding up a sign that read, "My mom runs things better than everyone." No one dared argue with her. And that's where the story ends. The story of the CEO who came to Malaga to inspect a hotel and found, in the lobby, a little girl with a melting ice cream, and a woman who told him the truth without asking for anything in return. Because sometimes love doesn't show up dressed for the occasion. Sometimes it arrives in a tired uniform, with a unicorn backpack, a beaded bracelet, and an uncomfortable sentence said at exactly the right moment. And if you have someone in your life who tells you the truth without expecting anything back, you already know what you have. And now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Marina was right to forgive Mateo, or would you have needed more time to trust again? Leave your answer in the comments. Here at Fall in Love with This Story, we read every message with so much love, because this little corner of the internet grows because of you, the people who feel, comment, laugh, and sigh with us in every story. And if this story kept you company for a little while, share it with someone who also needs to be reminded that sometimes love arrives in the most unexpected way, even in a hotel lobby, with a melting ice cream, and a truth waiting to come out into the light.